Hello, Zeke. As much as I would like to continue playing with you, I have to make a video. For the kids. Oh, fuck! Shit. Holy shit. Okay, I won't film near you. Fuck. Hello, everyone. It's Eisenberg. No, look, I know it's not Christmas, but just to sake of this video, let's just pretend that it still is. Please, and thank you. No, look, I haven't exactly done a movie review on this channel for quite a while. Last time I really did this was the Broken Toy movie, which I wouldn't really consider that a movie. Let alone I wouldn't really let alone I wouldn't really consider today's movie a movie. That being Kirk Cameron's Saving Christmas. And some of you people might recognize Kirk Cameron as the Growing Pains child star in the show in the 80s. And some people might recognize him for his very shitty Christian-made movies. So, and just by the title, and just by the cover of this video, you can probably tell that this is going to be a bit of a joyride. So I hope you guys have your empty mugs of hot chocolate. And let's get straight into this. So this video was supposed to be made like, it was supposed to be at least, or at the most, uploaded a day or two after Christmas, but I never got around to editing it because I forgot I filmed it. And by the time I was done, I didn't like the outcome of it. So here I am doing this at the start of this year instead of the end of last year. So a little background on Kirk. Like I mentioned before, he started off his days in the show Growing Pains. Apparently this is a real story. He got a girl fired from the show because he refused to work with her because apparently he found out she was like a former Playboy model or some shit like that. And because of his religious morals, he got her fired. And I guess after the show ended, he just went down this path of just doing very shitty, low-budget, Christian-made movies. None of them really being any noticeable. Well, some actually did make a decent amount of money, surprisingly. I guess he would also do things to like give his idea on just his religious beliefs on news.
So what do you do if one of your 6 kids says, "Dad, bad news, I'm gay"?
I'd sit down and I'd have a heart-to-heart with them, just like you would with your kids. I'd talk to them about...
If one of my sons said that, I'd say, oh, "That's great, son, as long as you're happy." What would you say?
Well, I wouldn't say that's great, son, as long as you're happy. I'm going to say, you know, there's all sorts of issues that we need to wrestle through in our life, and just because you feel one way doesn't mean we should act on everything that we feel.
If you're wondering what Kirk Cameron is doing right now, he's currently under a major controversy for hosting Christmas caroling events in groups of 500 people or more, nobody social distancing, and nobody wearing masks.
All right, we want you to take a look at this site. Kirk Cameron defying health orders once again. This is a live look from Air 7 over Point Mugu, where the actor is hosting another unpermitted faith-based event.
So, just giving you an idea of who we're dealing with. So let's get into the actual movie for once. I guess the best way to really describe this is just being almost on par with like a Neil Breen movie. The best way to really describe it is just think of a Neil Breen movie, but doesn't have any ironically funny parts. Has a higher production value, better cinematography, and actors who have a somewhat better acting career, I guess. Comparing this movie to the Neil Breen movies isn't really saying much, to be honest. Let's talk about the cover of the movie. It's got Kurt running towards you with stuff in his hands. Does it have anything to do with the movie? No, it doesn't. Except that it's about Christmas. There's money flying behind him. Does that have anything to do with the money? I mean, does that have anything to do with the movie? Somewhat. I guess this kind of talks about the theme-ish. Or he's just trying to show off how much money this movie made. The movie actually starts with Kirk for the first 4 minutes. Fuck. The movie actually starts, like, the first 4 minutes are just Kirk basically explaining to the audience what the movie's about and how much he loves Christmas.
I love Christmas. I admit it. I love everything about Christmas time. I love the cookies. I love the fire. I love the presents. I love the stockings. I love the tree. I love the fudge. I love the lights.
But while doing this, he proceeds to drink, or he pretends to drink hot chocolate out of a mug, which is very clearly an empty mug. And this isn't the first time that this happens. This happens throughout the movie with characters just for some reason pretending that they're drinking something out of a mug. I don't know how it's just that hard to get a mug and fill it up with something. I wouldn't care if it was just water. Why you couldn't just like fill it up with something? And you can't just say they didn't have hot chocolate. There's a whole scene in the movie where Kirk is just giving hot chocolate to kids. Did all the kids just drink all the hot chocolate or something? I mean, I don't even care if it was... Like, call this a dumb nitpick on my part, but it's just so stupid that I just hate it when I see like films do this. Hey, Kirk Cameron, if you are watching this by any chance, let me show you how to actually use a mug in a movie. You get a mug if you're choosing, like I'll use this one for example, and then you get something you like to drink, and then you pour it in there, and then you take a sip out of it. I'm just trying to show Kirk Cameron how to use a mug in a movie because he clearly doesn't fucking know how to do it. So after a 2-minute title card sequence, we're given the actual star of the movie, and we're introduced to Kirk.
You really stepped it up this year. You got Santa Claus. Where'd you find him? What do you have to pay a guy like that? It's Uncle Bill.
We later find out from his sister that his brother-in-law doesn't like taking part in Christmas parties, and it tries its best to really like depict his brother-in-law Christian as, I guess, the Scrooge or the Grinch of this story, the bad guy basically. We're given this scene where I guess one of the people at the party tries to complain to Christian about how his job doesn't let him have a crazy shirt day. Has nothing to do with the story at all. It comes up a couple times in the story, and it's never brought up again afterwards. But I guess it's the movie's way of just trying to really depict that Christian's brother is an asshole because he doesn't want to listen to him. But to be honest, I kind of related to his brother mostly because I would be just as annoyed and wouldn't want to listen to an annoying family member complaining about something that is pretty not a big deal and just stupid to really complain about.
Crazy Shirt Fridays.
From who?
The man. Corporate. They think they're gonna tell us what to do. Well, we're gonna go to HR. I'm gonna take it straight to HR. You gotta read your emails. If we don't have Crazy Shirt Fridays, it's the end for us. Man, that's all we got. What else do we...
2 seconds later, Kirk tries to find his brother and he's just suddenly gone. And then he goes outside and finds him just sitting in his car for whatever reason. I mean, he tells them that he doesn't like parties because he doesn't think that materialistic items have anything to do with honoring God on Christmas.
Christian's also the only character in this entire movie that actually makes the most sense, up until the end, of course.
Now, I don't know why he goes to his car, because the party is being hosted at his house by his wife. And it's a fucking big house. It's clearly a goddamn big house. I mean, we're kind of given how big it is just from the opening shot. So I don't know why he couldn't just go somewhere else in the house, but he goes to his car, and it wasn't like he was on his phone or anything to really keep himself occupied. So what was his plan like after that? Was he just like planning to just fall asleep in the car until everyone leaves? Or was he just wanting to watch everyone leave one at a time? Or what? Like, I never really understood that. Call that a small nitpick on me, but it's just something I thought about. After he gives his reasons on why he doesn't like Christmas, Kirk just insistently just says he's wrong.
You're all wrong.
About what?
About everything you just said.
I said a lot.
Yeah, and it's all wrong.
The next hour of this film is just basically Kirk and his brother-in-law just talking, consistently arguing about whether materialistic items have anything to do with Christmas or not. And it's like that for just basically the majority of this film, just them talking in the car, which is this very poor camera technique of just shot, reverse shot, shot, reverse shot. They kind of just set up 3 cameras, one camera facing the other character, and then a camera in the middle to show both of them talking. And that's kind of really it, to be honest. I mean, we're given these stories about Kirk, what certain things of Christmas resemble, such as how Christmas trees resemble the time when, I guess, Adam and Eve met, and how Adam ate a fruit off a tree. But of course, he realized he stole the fruit and he couldn't give it back, so he puts himself on a cross or something. I don't know. I'd probably left out like 5 things in that, but regardless, I don't think it would have made sense at all. And I can't confirm or deny this, so whatever, I guess. And probably the most ridiculous one is when he goes on to say how the meaning of Santa Claus comes from the term of Saint Nicholas, and that Saint Nicholas beat people or beat anybody up for not having faith in God, I guess. I mean, it's really a bit out there to say that a man would beat someone up because they're not a believer of God. While Christian and Kirk are talking about their Christmas thing in the car, there's a scene, again, that pops up with the guy who complained about crazy shirt day at work and some other guy at the party. They had this, and they talk about conspiracy or some shit. I don't really know.
You heard about Area 51? What about Area 52? That's where they're keeping all the mangers and trees and nativity scenes they keep taking down. Speaking of down, you know why the Pope really stepped down? Da Vinci Code, right? Wrong. There's a whole Picasso Code. I'm actually still working on that one. Come on, man. They got fluoride in our water.
This whole scene served like no purpose in the story at all. I don't know why it was even brought up, because it never gets touched up upon later in the story, but they leave it off like it will be. If you saw someone at a party, it's just 2 guys sitting on a couch and they're facing forward with their mugs like this, you would honestly think they're talking. Doing this doesn't cover up anything. And not only that, I don't even think like they did that just for the sake of the scene. I think they just did it because the guy who was talking about conspiracies just forgot his lines. So they just, because his chin doesn't exactly move up when he speaks. Not only that, it's the moment he does this, it's immediately dubbed over with this like, I guess audio they must have filmed of him saying his lines the next day.
We're watching. Cups up. All right, man, check this out. We got to go on the offensive. It's like the rapper Sugar Free said, if you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready.
So back to the actual story. Christian realizes that he's been an asshole the entire time and just kind of simply agrees with Kirk with everything he says. Doesn't really argue back, to be honest. And the movie ends with him doing a belly slide on his floor, and then everyone does a dance off. And I'm not exaggerating when the movie ends with him doing a dance off. That's how it really ends. The movie would later go on to get a 0 in Rotten Tomatoes, and also currently sits at a 30% in audience score. Kirk, being the genius he is, didn't like that at all, and told people to give the movie a higher rating than it deserves. So that, with him not understanding how the internet works, people caught wind of this, and only give him a better reason to really shove the movie even more. The movie would also later go on to win 4 Razzie Awards for Worst Picture, Worst Screenplay, Worst Actor, Kirk Cameron, and probably the best award, Worst On-Screen Combo, Kirk Cameron and His Big Ego. I mean, look, I sometimes think I'm a harsh dude, but Jesus fucking Christ, that's so harsh. The funny thing about this too is that this movie could have easily avoided being such a bad movie if it had just done like simple things right. Now, I don't think it would have been great if it got these problems right, but it would have not been like 0% on Rotten Tomatoes level of bad. If it just didn't have scenes that had nothing to do with the movie at all whatsoever, or if it just didn't have scenes where characters are either overacting and then you got people who are just doing no acting at all, or if it just had probably the thing it shows the most from is just editing. That's what the movie suffers from the most, just poor editing and camera work. And that biggest complaint coming from the scenes where Kirk and Christian are just talking. It's mostly just they get a camera, plop it on a stand, and press play, and that's really it. They don't do anything special with the camera work at all to keep the audience basically intrigued with the scene. And that's where most of the audience in the movie, that's where you lose most of your audience. Yeah, and a good example of making a confrontation between 2 people interesting with just simple editing and camera techniques is just basically the first 20 minutes of Inglorious Bastards. I'm not going to go too in-depth on this, just going to talk about a couple parts that make it unique. If you guys want to see an actual good breakdown of this scene from Inglorious Bastards, then I'll link in the description below. What's so interesting about it is not the fact that Hans has more power over Mr. Lapadite, but he has enough power that he controls the scene. and the cameras in this movie follow him. Once Hans sits down in this scene, it's almost, the camera's basically almost like eye level with him. However, when we're shown Mr. Lapetite, it's almost like they're looking down at the camera, as if we're watching this from Hans' perspective. And once later in the scene where Mr. Lapetite sits down with Hans to discuss paperwork and where the possibility of the Dreyfus family is, specifically the Jewish people he's looking for, you hardly ever see Hans alone. A couple times you do, but it's almost never. However, when we're shown Mr. Lapetite, Hans is either barely in frame or not in frame at all. It's one way of showing how singled out and vulnerable Mr. Lapetite is compared to someone like Hans who has so much power over him. What's easy to point out too is that Hans' hat is like almost never not in frame too, but you mostly see it in frame whenever Mr. Lapetite is talking. And it's one way of showing that despite Hans may not be in the scene, his presence is always going to be there. It's one way of just showing how much authoritative power and figure that Hans has over just an innocent family like Mr. Lapetite. And once we get to the reveal that Hans knows or has basically figured out Mr. Lapetite for hiding the Dreyfus family under his floorboards, or giving a close-up of his facial expression, and it goes pretty quick from just a casual face to all seriousness. Meanwhile, when we're shown Mr. Lapetite's face, he's just in tears. What Tarantino does in this movie with scenes like that is just such a great way of filmmaking, or just really a great way of storytelling, really. And Inglorious Bastards doesn't just have one scene like this, it's loaded with scenes of just characters talking. And it's simple, like, filming techniques, like I mentioned before, that make a lot of these scenes more interesting, and a lot of times a lot more suspenseful without having to rely just on dialogue. And I think if Kirk just kind of at least copied that kind of way of filmmaking into stories, or his movies really, I don't think they'd be anything special, but they wouldn't be as horrendous as Saving Christmas. And of course, by copying, I don't mean just flat out copy the scene when have Saving Christmas end with Kirk finding out Christian is hiding enemies of the state under his floorboards.
You're sheltering enemies of the state, are you not? Yes.
The movie ends with a soldier shooting up his floor.
I hear it.
My point being is that what Tarantino does with a lot of his films really can easily be adapted in his movies as just a good way of just storytelling without having to just plop a camera in front of someone, have them talk, and call it a scene. So that's going to be it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you guys actually enjoyed, like, when I do movie reviews like this, just let me know in the comments. And hopefully this year I can just at least have a more consistent, like, upload schedule. Granted, I said that last year. I said similar stuff like that last year. Look how that turned out, of course. But we'll see though. But until then, I'll see you guys next video.